Hi, welcome to today's episode. This is episode 7 of the Author Podcast. No, I can't believe it. Lucky 7. And I haven't even given up yet. Most people don't make it this far. In fact, most quit after episode 3. Not me. I'll likely quit sometime after episode 7, right? Now, I don't have any plans to quit per se, but we all stop doing something at some point for one reason or another. Maybe life gets busy, maybe something happens, maybe you get banned from YouTube for making content they don't like. But my goal for this podcast is to increase awareness of my books and grab new readers along the way. I figure if you enjoy my thoughts in your ears, maybe you'll enjoy my imagination through your eyes. So today I want to start with what led me to writing and take you through my process to publish a book. Then we'll move on to a funny product ad I saw, and I'll riff some thoughts about it while sharing my PTSD memory that it triggered. Now, as you probably know, I'm a practicing ER doctor in Indianapolis. I've been doing that about 20 years now, and I'd always enjoyed writing, and I even plotted out a few books when I was in junior high. That would have been around 1990 or 1991, give or take a year or two. Now, I was lucky when we were growing up in that my dad worked in the computer industry, so we always had one laying around the house back when I was growing up, starting with a VIC-20, complete with a cassette tape drive. He used to program games for us on it and store it on the cassette tape, which is great memories, right? But this also meant I learned how to type when I was younger. Now, again, back to my attention span. Quick aside, let's see how fast I can type. I'll do a stream of consciousness typing for 60 seconds in a screen record window and see how many words I can knock out. And don't worry, I'll speed up the video. You won't have to watch for the full minute. Let's go. Okay, not bad. Of course, there's some typos, but authors will tell you, worry about that stuff later. It's important to get the story onto the paper and then go back and edit later. When your mind gets into a zone, you just keep rolling with it. It's also suggested that you stop writing when you're still in the zone, when the words are coming easily and your mind is just bouncing from idea to idea, rather than going until you have nothing left and then stopping. Now, if you stop when you're still on a roll, you'll likely continue that momentum when you sit down again and your mind is fresh, because you knew what you're saying and you knew where you were going. And it's just better to stay in your train of thought. And what I'll do is kind of write notes of where I'm at. So hey, if you're enjoying these videos, please take a moment, click the like button and subscribe. It helps me grow my audience, and the positive feedback encourages me to keep pressing on with them. And I love comments too, so please drop one below if you have a moment. Even if it's rude and disrespectful, go ahead and do it. I'll respond to that too. So back to writing. Now, I think college was my first attempt I made at truly writing a book. Now, I developed a love of sailing and all things tropical island related, so I wanted to kind of merge those together and write something that touched on them. So I created a rough outline of a story involving a sailor who ends up with serious damage to his boat, and he ends up stranded on a remote island. Has to build shelter, obtain food, water, kind of all the things, right? Ultimately, he's there long term. Storms come, tries to fix a boat to self-rescue. So proud of that story and the timeline. And it had some drama, some struggles, some danger. It was mine, and let's go write this thing. So then I showed it to my girlfriend at the time, who said, "Oh, so it's like Robinson Crusoe." Zing, right? Of course, it was exactly like that. So dang it. Set it to the side and said, well, we need to come up with another plot. So after some time, I'm like, hey, let's come up with a genius IT tech guy. And he created a new system for interacting with computers. Again, this is late 90s now. I'm in college at IU. Bluetooth isn't a thing. Wireless mouses, keyboards, those aren't a thing. I'm actually selling computer books online through my own website. I think it was called tightweed.com, just kind of a random thing from the dictionary. And I was at trade shows also. And this is all while I'm pre-med in college. So I've always been driven to have some sort of business activity, even though I'm terrible at organization. But my tech guy character in the book puts wires inside his fingers. He's got a holographic keyboard displayed on his desk, and just by moving through it, it figures out what he's doing. His operating system reacts to his movements and has a rotating desktop view, like inside itself, that hadn't been released yet, just multiple panes available virtually. Basically, this was going to blow away Mac and Windows, and everyone was going to want it. The IT world's commenting on how this Titan is just taking over and how he basically reinvented the wheel. But somebody said he didn't just reinvent it, he put a patent on it. Hence the title, Patent the Wheel. Now, I would still like to use that title somehow, but nothing's come to mind yet. But of course, like all good ideas in college, I never wrote the book. I sketched some chapter outlines on yellow legal pads and tossed them in a manila envelope. I found them actually when we moved last year. It's crazy that I'm now working on my ninth book and have several more completely outlined and just waiting to be written. And then I find the initial attempt I made way back in college. So fast forward to medical school, I continued to pursue IT side projects and eventually settled on a blog. Back before blogging was actually a term. My cousin and I started it together. We called it medschooldiary.com. I'll try to get a picture here. But we posted updates on what it was like to go through medical school and gave some pretty raw looks at it emotionally for those interested in following along. We had friends, we had family, nobody knew what it was like. And so we just wanted to make that available to people to see. We eventually expanded to other students and added pre-med, dental, ophthalmology, and a few other professional graduate programs. I think we had over 30 people writing for us at one time. We sold the site to studentdoctor.net for a few $1,000s and called it a day. Here's a copy of the page from the Internet Wayback Machine. It's a great site if you've never been there. But we had over 14 million views back then, which is impressive. I made about 800 entries on my site through medical school. Later, I had an author reach out to me and ask if she could use those to write a book on what it was like to go through medical school. And I said, of course, you can do that, yeah. And then our posts were actually used in her book, a nonfiction look at medical school. So I thought that was pretty cool. But I didn't do much with writing in residency or my first 15 years as an attending physician. I ran through a huge list of hobbies, but nothing really stuck. Most of them related to creativity in some regard. Screen printing, laser engraving, 3D printing, leather journal making, lots of other random ones also. But I like to be creative and artistic, but I can't take a pen or a brush and, make something beautiful. I don't have that skill. I'm not Hunter Biden. But I need to control a piece of technology that actually creates the piece. Enter novel writing. So now it's 2020, COVID. I hate to even mention it. I hate what it did to our society and what our society did in response to it. There's so many lessons that we could have learned that we didn't from our mistakes, but that's for a different video. But when COVID hit, I had a lot of downtime. Now it's crazy, right? I'm an ER doctor in the midst of the worst pandemic of our lives, and it seemed like it was going to bankrupt the healthcare industry because it basically shut the whole system down. No one was providing care. All the outpatient offices were closed and surgeries were canceled. And for the first 6 weeks, no one was coming to the ER, despite it not really being in our state yet. Nobody had PPE, so they just shut everything down. I mean, as an ER group, we couldn't even make payroll. We weren't seeing any patients. And now I figured I could dwell on that untenable situation and just rot in fury and worry about the future, or I could escape into an artificial reality. And it was time to learn how to write. So I have a very active imagination that helps with plotting stories. Gets me into trouble sometimes with jokes I make, but what are you going to do? So I sorted out the plot of a story in a few hours and wrote it all down in a Google document. Then I grabbed my colleagues and say, hey, let me tell you a story. And the best part was that the story ended up with the setup for a sequel. My colleagues were either just being polite or they thought it was a pretty good idea. Then I thought about another plot and shared that with them. Again, it was well received. Again, maybe because we weren't doing anything in a slow COVID time or because they really did like it. There's one way to find out though. So I decided it was time to learn how to do it. So I bought a few books on writing from Amazon, watched a lot of YouTube videos, and I watched a master class by James Bell. And once I'd finished that, I knew there was a process I could follow. Like there was a formula to writing fiction, and that's something that I could follow. It's something I could do. So I skipped my first plot and dove straight into the second one, and that ended up being the first book I released, Redemption. I created my character Bryce Chapman to basically be a fictional version of myself, down to the humor and everything. Write what you know, right? But by then I'd learned that if you want to be successful, then you should write multiple books in a series. Getting a reader is the hardest part of marketing. You got to grab that first person to take a chance on you. And once they like your first book, they'll probably read everything that you have, assuming they're all fairly similar genres. So that's why I say don't genre hop either, is what they say, right? But many readers won't take a chance with a new author if you only have one book out. So I knew I needed to get several books out, and a trilogy sounds great. So I finished the first book, then immediately started on the second and the third. Now, if I were smart, I'd put 15 books out in that series, but I wanted to write other things. I'm not writing to replace an income. I'm writing because I enjoy telling stories. Now, don't get me wrong. I would love to sell enough that I could retire, but that's a long way off. And as you saw in episode 5, my wife would like me to sell enough that she doesn't have to wear swimsuits with them on there. But for my first release, I shopped it to dozens of agents with 0 positive responses. They say this is typical. You need to submit to hundreds of agents. Now that just sounds absurd to me, and so I stopped doing it. I used a vanity publisher to get the first book out, which I deeply regret. And basically it's somebody, either a professional business or somebody on the side that you pay, who then in the back of it hires an editor, a cover designer, a formatter, then they release your book for you. All at an upcharge, of course, and probably a split of the revenue also. So I learned a lot about the process in doing it. It cost me a lot of money to buy my rights back and re-release the book on my own. And honestly, they didn't seem to care about the typos or promoting the book at all. I've self-published every book since that first one on my own. I use a professional cover designer and a proofreader, and then along with my wife as my alpha reader, then a small group of beta readers that changes from time to time, and then I format the book myself, either in Vellum or Atticus, and then I publish the files on Amazon. Now that I have 8 books out, I'm finally getting around to writing the first book I plotted, Seeds of Change. I actually really like this cover too. I'll show you what the cover looks like. It's available for pre-order on Amazon now. It was originally going to be called Plant the Seed, but I like the new title better. It's the second book in my Perseus Eco-Terror thriller series. I'd wanted it to make the first in this series, but I got so excited about the plot of Murder Burger that I knocked this one out first and said, we'll just put this one as first. And I'm able to kind of blend them in well enough, I think, despite the overlapping timelines. Now, the third book is going to tie both plots together and hopefully be an action-packed, thrilling conclusion that kind of offers some redemption. And I know the general idea of where I'm going to go with it, but have not plotted it out yet. Again, way too many projects and other things in life going on. So I'm recording this on March 6th. It's my 21st wedding anniversary, so happy anniversary to my wife and biggest fan. She's currently in the basement working out, and we have a nice dinner planned for tonight at a steakhouse ran by a local couple that we know and are friends with. Their other restaurant, Taxman, is featured in my second book, Deception, as an Easter egg to them and the local crew here on the south side of Indianapolis. So from a technical standpoint, I do all of my writing inside Scrivener on my laptop. I keep the files on Dropbox, so there's a backup off-site, and I can open them on my PC or laptop, depending on where I'm at the time. But at least 98% of the time, I write on the laptop. So I purchased a 100-pack of ISBNs from Bowker. It seemed like a lot at the time, and it was over $500, I think. But they get used quickly. Each ebook, paperback, audiobook, etc. takes its own ISBN, and each re-release takes a new ISBN. So I didn't want to use the Amazon free one since I wanted to release my works wide, and the Amazon ISBN, I believe, can only be used on their platform. And I made like 43 cents each on each paperback sold outside of Amazon's platform, so I stopped doing that. Someday I'll go wide again, but for now I'm staying lazy and tied to Amazon. So that's my story of how I started writing novels. I'll get into the nitty-gritty stepwise process in a future episode. But seriously, let me know in the comments if you're enjoying these episodes. They do take some time to do and edit. So if you have any questions about writing or my book specifically, drop them below. Send me an email, brianhartmanme@gmail.com. Okay, moving on to a product ad that I saw. So scrolling through Facebook, and Granger pops up with another great one. They have a lot of odd things. This is a portable toilet flusher. And here's the picture that got me to start scrolling and click on the ad. Maybe it's because it was funny. Maybe because it triggered my PTSD from residency. More on that later. So here's the image. Now look at this poor girl. Does that smile look natural or a little forced? Like she's thinking, please don't ever show this picture to anyone. Now, in my opinion, she's got to be a nurse. If she's not medically trained, then they absolutely nailed the costume. She's got the clog shoes, the lanyard with a bunch of cards and phone numbers that the hospital attorney thinks you need on hand at all times, right? She even had the presence of mind to spin the badge around, backward, so that we can't see the hospital logo or her name. So what exactly is the product? It's a portable toilet flusher. Basically, if your building loses water supply and someone befouls a toilet, this machine can save the day. You fill this giant tank, and then someone pushes it into the bathroom, lowers the arm to seal the toilet bowl and prevent backspray, then they turn on the water. It'll essentially allow the toilet to flush, all for the low cost of $6,400 plus tax and shipping. The bonus is it also cleans bedpans. Now I can see how this can be used for toilets, right? Got that big arm. How to use it for a bedpan? Is there a manual setting? Like, is there a separate hose? Like, that's got to be a mess. And just throw the bedpan out, all right? Even if it's metal, just toss it. It's done. But I feel so bad for the people that need to use this in the hospital. I mean, where's the dignity? Can you imagine pushing this down the hallway? How much time does it take to clean and dry before you move it to the next room? I mean, you got this big thing there. And whose job is it to do this? This product image suggests it's a nurse's job to clean the toilets. Now, that may not be the best use of an RN's training, especially at a time when the hospital's water supply is down and there's probably all kinds of other backup things they have to be doing that take way longer than they do on a normal day. Now, back to my PTSD discussion. Yes, I admit it, I am a victim of pelvic traumatic stress disorder. I'm sure plenty of women feel the same because who really enjoy pelvic exams? Now, in residency, the hospital I trained at had an initiative to offer PAP exams to any woman who is out of date if she were admitted to the hospital. Basically, it's a cancer detection program. It makes sense, right? It's good for the woman, it's good for the hospital to get some revenue. Unfortunately, I've seen many 40 and 50-year-old women with invasive cervical cancer. Actually, I think one in her 70s also. I think what happens is they get older and not as sexually active. There's not a lot going on there. And then all of a sudden they start getting symptoms, but they've forgotten about the PAC exam, which is often the point at which it's spread and invaded somewhere. And it's a horrible situation. So the hospital I trained at tasked the OBGYN residency with performing the exams when ordered by the nurse during an intake screening. And like great punitive residency programs, they assign the task to an off-surface resident, like emergency medicine, who happens to be rotating on the OB service. Now, ER, the people who will never do a PAP exam, not a pelvic exam, but specifically a PAP exam, and probably have the least training of anyone on the rotation in how to collect a proper sample of cervical tissue for cancer detection. But here's why the image triggered me. Most hospital beds are not set up for pelvic exams, right? You can do it on an upside down bedpan, but that's not the most comfortable way, and it's pretty difficult in people with a bit larger bodies. So they had a portable cart that would push through the hospital to the patient's room. Instead of laying in the bed, they'd turn sideways, scoot out till their bum's on the padded cart, and it had stirrup arms that stuck up above the top of the cart. You'd have them put that in there, do the pelvic exam, kind of clean everything, reset, go on to the next room. But when you push the cart down the hospital, the stirrups stuck out like caterpillar antennae, and everybody stared at you, knowing exactly what you were pushing and what you were going to go do with it. Now, sometimes you had to go through the hospital lobby, past the cafeteria, all sorts of busy places. And the other residents openly laughed at you because they knew what was going on, and it's residency, right? There's a lot of stuff there. But it was so bad. But that hospital has since been demolished, and I'm still here. So I guess I got the last laugh. So a final story before we end today about flushing toilets without a water supply. We built our dream home after residency, and it was on a well out in the country, and the well pump was powered by 220 volts. Well, we had 5 toilets in the house. Huge ice storms forecast for February. It's our first winter in the house. Since we lived rural, I assumed we'd lose power. I had a 5,000 watt generator, plenty of fuel, extension cords, and a plan. Right? I'm an ER doctor. I got it covered. So I filled our second story master bedroom soaker bathtub with lots of water, probably 60 gallons, right? I could flush toilets for days. We had lots of water in the fridge. We had one son at the time, and I think he was about 2, which means we probably had another one on the way. Okay, so everything's set up. Storm's getting ready to hit. It's in the evening. I've filled the tub. We go downstairs, watch TV, and 30 minutes later, water starts leaking through the ceiling onto us. The stupid tub is leaking. I'm livid. So I go upstairs, drain the tub, and in my anger, I basically give up. I don't even think about it. I don't fill the other tub. Don't even think about it. But in my mind, I'm still prepared because I was blinded by rage and didn't realize that no, I was no longer prepared. So then the storm hits, power goes out, we wake up, no power. I'm actually off for a few days, so I could hang out and help out at home. My dad and stepmom lived about 15 minutes away. They'd offered to let us stay there since they still had power. I'm like, no, we're young and adventurous. We got this. It's like camping out in the house. So it started getting cold in the house, so we retreat to the basement bedroom, where I've got 2 space heaters powered by the generator. We've got a young child, and we're bored now. But we have DirecTV, and I had a generator running, so I moved things around and got the TV up and running. We got Mickey Mouse Clubhouse. We got puffs. We're good. But later in the day, as time goes on and needs change, power still isn't back on. Couldn't power the well pump with my 110-volt generator, and now we're out of water in the toilet tanks. So we pack up, head to my dad's house, call it a day, and wait for the power to come back on. Now, why am I telling you this? What's the lesson here? I don't know. Fill up a separate bathtub, get a 220-volt generator, get a tub that doesn't leak when you fill it higher than normal, live in an area supplied by underground power lines. Maybe all of the above. But either way, that's it. Episode 7 is in the can. Thanks for watching. Now, go grab a book, a toilet cleaning robot, and go enjoy this beautiful gift of life.